an aspect of the series I've been wondering for probably, like, I'd say mainly the last like 20 or so chapters is what exactly Akari is going to get in terms of like her character upgrade thing and things that she brings to the table. And I've mentioned I'm hoping that her power progression takes a while because everybody else is already going, like, everybody else that is in like a young high potential character has their own thing going on. And with her, like, she has her own sensory ability going on, just like it seems like that's unique to her. And I'm hoping that she could now figure out, like, if maybe she could have some form of high level like, you know, just general like mental connection and telepathic powers. Because man, this chapter could have been helped so much for Kyoka if they just had a way of mass communication. Because it seems in terms of individual squads they have ways of communicating to a degree, but really I think that one thing about this verse, because I've noticed when it comes to characters, a lot of the big characters seem to have a pretty rounded set of abilities. It doesn't seem like they just have a, they have one skill that they apply, and if that skill doesn't really work, they don't have any other ways around it. As well as seemingly everybody has their own trump card, which I always give props to characters and verses that, like, when a character who's always at a decent level of experience, I feel like logically most just people in general would have a level, it doesn't have to be some crazy broken ability, but some form of trump card that you're like, okay, this is something in a dire situation, I am able to use this, and this is my last effort in order to get out of this, dire situation. And Kyoka went all in. I'm curious to know again when it comes to her awareness of the landscape of the fights and what was going on. Like, did she know that Kiyoshi was coming? Like, because if she had waited and it was 2v1, I think that like it would be a lot better of a case, because clearly from this chapter it's not like she can't compete. And when it comes to like her dropping her really cool, eye crest, I think that, like, just her being able to keep up with Azudaroth and land effective hits on him. She doesn't have to do long lasting ones, but if her and Kyoshi like were just teamed up and she just stayed in normal hitting for like 64 tolls, it would have been, I think they would have just lasted in a general sense like much better and fair against him. Because if they wait out like holding on and they get like where, I don't like, when it comes to Sarugi, I imagine that his fight is going to end up when we get to the that fight and then finish it. He is going to be out of commission relatively for the rest of the arc. Maybe he heals a little bit and comes joins in the fight, but I assume that he is not going to be in great condition post winning his battle. Whereas Sakaki, I would assume that he is not going to have nearly as much of a problem going in his situation because he's a 2v1. But Yuta, I don't imagine Yuta and Mukurojima are as powerful as Tanjinchi, just based off of seemingly the gaps that we've been shown. But even if they are, we know Sakaki is stronger than Tsurugi, so he should have he should be well better off when it comes to the end of his fight and then come help Kiyoshi. Because right now, like with Azudaroth, like none of the damage that he got from Kyoka was lasting, but she did do damage to him. He just regenerated, and we still don't know the details of the limit of regeneration when it comes to the demons within the verse. It seems like they just have a certain quantity, like just generally. Otherwise, it's like tied to their power level, maybe. Because I think my guess is whatever their black energy power is called, if we ever get some detail on it, that just goes all around with their abilities, and that's why they don't all just spam these energy attacks. Maybe it's like a full round thing where it's like, yeah, we have this innate regeneration tied to it, but also we have a way of using it offensively or defensively, or just different kinds. And uh, and with that, I think it would make a lot of sense where it's like if they just are dealt over amounts of damage to whatever their level of whatever that energy is, they can't just regenerate over it. It's just that's their power getting snuffed out by a larger power situation. I think that would be like, there's like small details within the verse I really am hoping that we get down to at some point. And it seems like, at least to me, the structure of the story, or the structure of the writing style and the powers in the verse, was that we're going to be getting that kind of information in the downtime of the arcs. So we'll see on that. Like, just in between the major events, when characters are in their cooldown time, seems to be when we're going to be getting specific details. Because it would make sense if we would find out more about the demons in detail and how they work after Azudaroth, to where it's like with the other two great demon lords start to mobilize, and it's like, okay, well, we need to learn more lore about the demon realm, and maybe that's when the other the special forces come in and we can see Toji in it. But I thought Kyoko was really cool in just her display, because she just comes in immediately in the fight, ready for combat. I thought it was really funny that Azudaroth was standing there just kind of chilling, looking around, talking shit about his crew. And one thing I really like about him, as I've mentioned, that the characters in this in the whole world of the story, I've liked relatively all of them, in terms of just like the only ones that have seemed bad are the ones that are intentionally made for you not to like them, because even the villains are pretty solid in it. And I think it was really funny when he's talking about his crew, and he's like, why are there so many people still alive? I can see a lot of living souls still in this area. And he's like, what are those goons in my squad doing? And I just thought it was really funny in his the way that he talks about him, because with Azudaroth, I think it's safe to assume, out of the great demon lords, he's probably the youngest and the weakest. So for his squad to be less like if we get the next group, and I would assume the other two great demon lords, their structures are going to be different, and probably one of them is going to be more like a kingdom empire type setup, to where they have more of like a military and they have a larger scale ranking. But with Azudaroth, his is like, because they're called the 13 Club, they just feel like a gang. And I like how within the 13 Club, that clearly there's a hierarchy, but they talk shit and mess around with each other. And I just think that's kind of funny, because even how he's talking about him, he's not talking like, oh, pathetic, weak henchmen, blah, blah. He's just like, what are these dudes doing? What do I pay you guys for? I just thought it was really funny, and just the style of how he goes about it. It shows that they, outside of, doing demon, like, blood-hungry conquest type stuff, they probably spar and mess around and just talk shit at each other. And I think that's actually pretty funny. I'm really hoping that at some point we get some more demon flashbacks and just see from their side of things, and see a little bit more of their world. But right now, I thought it was really cool, Kyoko just coming in, them having a little conversation, that both of them are talking about Kiyoshi, and they're talking about like, oh, they got a date going on, and I'm just standing here and be like, man, both of you sound kind of like a villain right now. He's a minor. But Azudaroth is just like, he's locked in. He's just like, yeah, like I got places to be, and I got a guy to see. So let's get done with you and figure out if you're worth my time. But she comes in, and clearly, after seeing her fight with Azudaroth, like I mentioned this before, when it comes to her previous fight, it was very clear that she really didn't have much of difficulty in that battle. She just got locked in. She just got locked in a hack's power, and then managed to get out of it. And then after that, just ran through Gorgon. So this just really hard confirms what my theory was with that she just, ran into a problem, figured it out. After that, really, that demon was no problem. It was just a one-trick thing that she handled. Because here, she's going way higher in terms of her general power force. And, like, she does, like, not only does she do just, like, brings out her sword way faster, she goes for, like, these cool, like, essentially, like, energy wave style. It seems to be, like, an internal attack where she just does, like, force just through a person, because Azudaroth is, like, vibrating when he gets hit by it. And then she pulls out her second crest, which I thought was really cool, because this confirmed in the series that angels exist. I thought it was one thing I thought about the series is really funny, is whenever there's a theory from a previous series that ends up coming over and instantly applies to a different one, and obviously it's not like theories and like themes and stuff get locked within one series, but I just think it's really funny when it happens, because there was like one thing that was really popular with Black Clover at the way back when it was like right after the first time skip, was the idea of there being like this civil war over the discrimination against the peasants and like the devil people and whatnot, because it was like, it made sense more so when they had that anime arc. But it was like it didn't really do that. But they ended up doing that kind of in Mashal, and I think they handled it in Mashal a little bit better. Whereas like the one thing that was gonna happen in Black Clover as well is like angels, we never really got that. Whereas we're just confirmed that in this chapter from Azudaroth, which I thought was really cool, because when she opens her eye patch, which again, awesome. I really like that her other one is an eye patch takeoff power up. There's just always something about that that's just really cool. I need to look into see like before, because obviously like there's other characters with eye powers, but specifically ones that like take it off besides Kenpachi that can fit into this, because otherwise she just gets to instantly join the club. But she has like this cool boost, I guess, set up because it's still Gong Girl, because she opens her second one, because she's it's called Eye Opener, and goes into a fusion form where I'm guessing when she's in it, she stays in that 128 toll the whole time, but she fuses with her tiger, but also gets angel wings and a halo, which I think her design is really cool. This design is awesome. It's super simple, but I love it. I'm a big fan of the style of this guy and his manga. I've mentioned before, the stylization of a series is really important because it gives it its own kind of like flavor that I think that just this series has really held on to really well. I mentioned before, it feels almost like, in terms of like stylization of like early Yu-Gi-Oh, but as a battle shonen. Well, it is a sort of battle shonen, but like a combat battle shonen where it's way more direct. And just the simplistic, cool, like occult themes I'm a big fan of. But when she's in this form, I thought it was just a really nice display of some of her general attacks, because she's just going for basic melee attacks and they're doing more damage than her previous like actual techniques. But she's also going for like these cool cross-cut attacks, and they're doing like, I think it's not just showing a visual slash. I'm pretty sure, at least based off it, that it is a holy energy, because obviously with the confirmation from Azudaroth that she has a contract with an angel and the halo and wings aren't just a design thing, it's actually an angel powered thing, that it just would make sense if she's using holy damage, because also that just hitting him and doing damage to him in general, because once he's hit by this, he's not in a spot where he looks like, oh, he's gonna lose. But right before she hits her ult attack, or is it like White Tiger Celestial Wing Purifying Fist, I was hoping that she would have a higher toll. It would go up like one more time. But just this is obviously just showing that this is where she's at right now. So any increase, and that's another thing I would love to get an explanation on, like how the mechanics of her power works. So what an increase in gongs is, or the toll. Is it double in just general power like every time, or is it like a squared where it's just every single time she gets like a general like percentage just jump up? I don't know. There's always, it could be almost anything. It could just be some form of general force damage additional thing, and that's not a multiplier. Who knows? I'll have to wait and figure out in detail. But for now, when she was going to hit that attack, he didn't look like, again, that he was done, but he still looked more worried for a second than I think he was giving credit. Because with Kiyoshi was somebody that during the fight was sustaining and getting stronger and stronger, whereas with her, she is just in direct play, like continuously going. And I think if she was able to keep holding this form and keep dropping attacks like this, she probably could have been in a position to win, but this is where Kyoka is limited to at the moment. And I think with that, it makes sense, because I have to go over the timeline at some point and figure out like specifically for years of when certain events happen, because I don't think she would have had this power for very long. Well, her Gone Girl crest, I think she's had for a while, but I think her contract with an angel and everything, I think that's something that she hasn't had for a long time. Just maybe like a couple of years is my guess, and it's just not something that she has full mastery of to the extent she could have. Because that's something I really like, that it doesn't seem like the characters are peaked in a lot of ways. And with confirmation specifically about, there's more great demon lords, it gives way for the characters to get stronger and advance in where they're at alongside the other people. Because it's very clear that they're like, nobody seems to be like, yeah, for sure, I'm the best ever and I'm going to be able to defeat Azudaroth. They're like, no, this is a thing that we know not even one cross paladin can do by themselves. You need to have a whole setup. Which again, if she just stalled and just waited for a little bit and had Kiyoshi show up, I think they could have 2v1'd him and really just pushed this guy to whatever his full extent is much earlier. But obviously, lack of support just kind of hurts him in this thing, and I think that's fine because really it's something in the important, I think, in the series when you have areas that are clearly not covered. If you have you have something, because if you look at like for instance, you look at all of the characters in that are the main cast that are the next generation type setup. You have Kiyoshi, who is obviously the main character. He's like the super high potential, high capability prodigy, but he's not experienced enough. He hasn't gotten to that point in his life where he is a fully realized exorcist. Hitsugi is close, but he just doesn't have that same level of untapped massive well of capability that Kiyoshi has. But he is still a highly capable person. Nihon and Jack Joe, I've talked about them a lot. They have 2 out of the 3 things already covered for their power. They just have to get more general just combat experience and just get more, get just general time in the field as things go. Akari, I would love to see Akari get a power up where she just gains support abilities for right now, and she gains skill before she ends up, being able to. Because we don't need her to. She doesn't have to do anything, I think, to directly combat this arc. But I think we could do so good if she just gains like a way of communication. Maybe soon after one of the other big fights, and she's able to tell Sakaki like telepathically what's going on and bring him over, so he's able to join in the fight faster. Because really, it reminds me of, it's like you get in a situation of when you see the difference between the advantages of small things in a verse. Like for example, Black Clover healers are pretty irregular, whereas in Fairy Tail, healing magic is a lost art. So there's only like healing magic is rare. And there's a very big difference when you have healers on a team in Fairy Tail because of that, because you don't have one of these people in most scenarios. You have people who have medical abilities, but not the same thing as directly just the ability to heal. And clearly in this verse, they need somebody who's just a really good support that can just like, just the ability, kind of like mass communication, to be able to connect people and relay information. They could have gotten in a much better scenario, I think, for this. But she doesn't, like, she wouldn't know that Kiyoshi is free and is on his way. And I think that's just something that can be improved as we go in the story. And if Akari's ability right now, that is like her unique thing, is her whole sensory ability of when a demon is within the vicinity, that already is something that is really useful. Because if she, like, think of just in the idea that she could like directly mentally communicate with someone and just say, hey, there's a demon in your area, go over here and do this thing. She could be like a great addition without having to just directly get in a fight. But as it were, I thought it was just really really cool the way that he blocked the attack by just biting on, like he just bites onto it, like he opens his mouth, takes it, and then just chomps on her fist. Because it's such a nice just little character detail for Azudaroth when you do stuff like this. I'm a big fan of the way that this guy writes this villain, because he's clearly this deranged psychopath, but the way that he writes him just being so like playfully crazy, I think is done really well. And I've mentioned before, there's a fine art to being able to make a fun berserker character like this. I'm a big fan of Zero from Fairy Tail, and it was great to see his return. And I loved seeing a character like this where he's unapologetically crazy, but he's done as it's in such an entertaining way that it's just fun to see him interact with different characters. And here it was cool to see that he's like, you know what, you actually did better than I expected, but you know what, it doesn't look like you're gonna make it to your date, because you're gonna die here. And he does, like, after that, confirm that there are angels in the verse, which I think is really cool. And I'm curious to know like what their overall involvement is going to be once we see more of the expanse of the lore and the landscape of the story once after we get through this. But he goes and just chucks her off, and he makes this comment about like, I don't want to cheat on Kiyoshi, so I need you to get out of here, and just goes and throws her off the building like garbage. And again, Kyoka, listen, I like your character. You've got a good backstory, and I'm hoping you don't end up doing anything too much. But you gotta remember, Kiyoshi is a minor. Like, calm down. Just you haven't gotten too much in the area. You haven't gotten as crazy as like a Zudaroth here, because luckily there's shooters that are way worse offenders nearby that you're able to get off a little bit, because this guy is an actual deranged psychopath. But Kiyoshi had this really good entrance going up and saving her, and it was great to see that panel right before Zudaroth snapped, where he's just blank staring up at Kiyoshi, and then he just has this completely maniacal, psychopathic grin, like super smile as Kiyoshi lands, and has this cool main character moment where he's like, "Leave it to me," just to come and fight up a Zudaroth. I'm guessing that we're gonna get their fight as a opener next chapter, and then we're gonna get back to the other fights, because we got to see the fights in order of what they're doing. I want to see just him drop a couple more techniques, because he really just used the same abilities against Kiyoshi, except Itanomaki, but using the rest, scattering radon and the little explosive spheres that he's got, whatever those little spike spears. I would love to see him use a couple more techniques, because now he's fully manifested. He's not on a timer, so until they get exercised, really, he should be fine at going all out. And I want to see what he can do in his full capability, because the Zudaroth, again, I'm guessing that he is the opener of the Great Demon Lords, and the ones after him, I would be willing to bet are going to be like way more like different layered of villains. But he is a special one for right now, because like I said, I'm a fan of when they're just unapologetically crazy, and I can't wait to see him fight in the next chapter, because the first thing he's going to say to Kiyoshi is going to be something unhinged, when the first thing he says when he shows up is talking about being able to smell him. So we're going to see this guy just go crazy in the next couple chapters, and I can't wait. I really will. My other big thing, and I'll put this on there just as a side, and this is just a small detail, because I want to do videos on the powers and talk about the crest, but I gotta wait for Sakaki to use all of his dice rolls, and we're missing just a few left, and to see what his other crest is, because clearly everybody big is going to have 2 crests, and the question is he using another demon, or is he going to have a completely different crest like Kiyoshi? But who knows? We're gonna have to find that out, because it seems like it's common to have 2, but for the people of at cross paladin level, or high that level of potentials we saw with Hitsugi. But I think there is a difference in what it takes to have 2 different ones rather than 2 at the same time. Because I think 2 at the same time is probably more specific. Like if you're ambidextrous, it's probably much easier, just as like an idea, because using the same power on 2 hands that you'd be able to use the same of. So maybe that's something that'd be more of like a perk, or like harder to use in muscle memory, whereas like it'd be something easier to learn a new ability on a free arm. I don't know. Either way, obviously learning a second one is a big deal. So it's happy to me, or a good thing to me that makes me happy, is to know that we have so far confirmation, everybody other than Sakaki, of specific specific second crests going on right now in direct reveal. So I'm guessing that he's going to have a second different one rather than a second one. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't have a third one, to be honest, but we'll see, because he's supposed to be the last generation's big super guy. So I wouldn't be surprised if he has a third one, because at some point we're going to get introduced to somebody with a third one. And he is contracted with demons, so it's like I wouldn't be surprised if he has another demon besides just high stakes, or he has a power kind of like how Kyoka has, where he can fuse with high stakes. I think that would be really sick. I think it'd be really cool if he does the same thing, but I don't know, because it would be questionable to me if he could do the same thing. It's like where it would kind of apply to Jack Joe, but it would be specific in a different power and application of what he's already got, because we know that the way that his power, and like how like Jack Joe and Nihon has, is it's specific when they step in their shadow for their bond in like a unique fighting style. So it would be a way to essentially achieve that similarity, but you would need another power. I don't know. Again, we need details in depth of some of these crests, and my guess is once we get through this arc is we'll start to get to some of that, because when you think about it, that's a power that isn't like it isn't a oh yeah exclusive to anybody, and it seems relatively like anybody at a level that is that is able to compete in the verse, I think has the capability for one crest, and then any the special people getting two, I think is a good defining difference because then it you could have say after Nihon and Jack Joe get to a level of strength where they're good and they're like okay well we've hit a wall, they can try and get a crest. Akari can get a crest, maybe that's how Akari is able to expand her ability, and then it's like okay I can keep everyone in telepathic communication so I can relay information of where demons are and like a sensory ability or something so she can pinpoint their location way easier. I think something like that would be really cool just to have easy advancements because now we're at a spot with like say like Hitsugi. I really like this is something I want to close on. Hitsugi's a really good character in terms of existing in the story for the abilities and mechanics because we see a lot of advancements and line setting and like setting the bar for X, Y, or Z for concepts like having a crest. Okay, where he was at, he was stronger than where he was at when he fought when he fought Sada, but he was able to put a good amount of damage into a demon lord level demon with Memi once he used Perfect Blue and made the Grand Cross rank through that arc, fighting against Toji. So there was a good spot for that. We know he got stronger. He got a second crest, so we know that upper level demon lord being able to just scrape to beat him is where a second crest person should be around. And with that, when we see all these other with Tsurugi and with Kyoka, that the cross paladin level people, they are trained with two crests. So one having two of the same, one having two different, and it just gives a really strong layer of where if somebody has X, Y, or Z, it sets them where they're going to be at in the story. So if somebody shows up with two different crests, we know they're going to be a big deal. Somebody shows up with the one crest, we know they're going to okay. This character is going to be able to hold themselves, and then somebody is at a spot where they are proficient with a power but isn't a crest. We know that they would be able to advance relatively easily by going and finding the crest that works for them and that advances their power. Because one thing that's really cool too is someone like this is the bonus, I guess. This is the last thing. This is a really good chapter for stuff in the world lore, which I'm really happy about. But I think with Hitsugi as well, we see with him versus Kiyoshi, Kiyoshi has mostly just mastery on his crest and doesn't seem to have any extra like tools and whatnot. Like he's got some just general abilities. Like he's got like his old like Fiat Lux or and I'm trying to think of like the bowling. I know that was more of a joke, but the ability to kind of like do some techniques outside of his crest. But he doesn't seem to have any extra gear to where like Hitsugi, besides using his crest, has his gun to where he has this pressurized water pistol shooting holy water bullets, and he's got that relatively infinitely to where he doesn't have to use his other stuff. So I like it when characters have additional gear, and you can see with that with other characters, they've already gone up this progression where they're relatively most people are going to have something besides a crest that they've were using throughout their time before they got their crest. Whereas Kiyoshi just seems to was talented enough to just start with those, and that also gives gives Kiyoshi the ability and opportunity that he could advance his capabilities just by gaining some form of tool that buffs what he's already got. Because that's where smart characters are at, where it's like, what could I just obtain that would be beneficial and advance, just what I do based off gaining something. Like again, if Akari just she gained a crest that all it did was just say, okay, I have the ability to if you accept, I can mentally connect with you, and then I can give you information based off of everything in like a 5-mile radius of demons I sense. You would be able to relay again. Oh yeah, go here, go here, go here, without people having to know. Oh, I sense something nearby, or like move around or visually see it, because it seems like sensing people in the verse is not a pinpoint mastered skill unless they use like energy attacks or they use their abilities and whatnot. When it comes to just a character being around, or Akari's sensory ability seems to be one of a kind. So let's see what that when as things go on. Maybe she could get a contract with an angel as well. But for now, I'm a big fan of just these advancements because it showed of what we're gonna see in the future. And anytime you have a piece of information just dropped like that, where it just really gives an opening for anybody in the future for this idea of like a contract with an angel for new people, with especially within the Exorcist. It's really cool just to also lay out that there could be potentially if there's angels, are there fallen angels? Is that the only thing we're gonna have in the verse? Are there gonna be other like religious mythological beings? Who knows? Because I would guess with this tiger's got to be something extra special. I don't know. Either way, we'll talk to you guys in the next one and talk about the next chapter. Hyped to see. I can't wait to see Kiyoshi opening fight this guy, but I really wanted to get to Sakaki and see his abilities before Tsurugi's fight with Tanjinchi, because we got to get through those before we get to the Azudaroth fight. That just makes sense. And maybe we'll find out whoever that giant arm is at some point. But other than that, yeah, like I said, I'll talk to you guys in the next one.